slides in there. I think one more. Yeah, here we go. And sorry, I guess I'll get started again after all that. But Kevin McCaffrey from KPMG, great to be here presenting some of our preliminary findings after undertaking 25 business interviews, as well as collecting additional responses through a public survey. And then we also undertook some secondary research to help complement that. And great to see some faces that we actually talked to during that process here today. So excited to pull in some of our findings from what we heard from yourselves as well as others. And so essentially the purpose of our work was we really wanted to go out there and support Dufferin County, establishing an economic baseline of what's going on in the county right here today. And the purpose behind all of that is to help them better understand how they can work with and support their local businesses, get an understanding of what they're going through, what they're dealing with, and how the county at the economic development level can better support them on that. And so through our report here and our work and our research and our outreach, our aim is to essentially pull everything together into a report with recommendations for the county on what they can think about doing differently or implementing or changing to better support businesses. And so to move on to the next slide here. So starting things out, and thinking about Dufferin's current economic state, what we understand of it is agriculture is at the foundation of the economy. It's where Dufferin has its historical roots in. And today, again, from what we see through the data, through all sources available, as well as discussing with stakeholders, it's clear that it's still a foundational piece of Dufferin's economy. And it's important not only to Dufferin, but as Ontario as a whole, providing that key strategic focus around food and maintaining Canada's own production, which is all the more important today, given all things considering. But beyond that, what we see today here is lots of opportunity as well for Dufferin with a increasingly diverse economy as other sectors and businesses pop up and grow and expand from there. And a lot of that, or what's coming around all of that recently, is unprecedented population growth. And with that, we see, past couple of years, very, very high and unprecedented growth, and moving into 2050, getting a countywide population to around 95,000 is the current projections. Aside from that population growth for Dufferin, we see it being located at a very strategic place in Ontario, in the province, where it's at a perfect location to help facilitate connection between the GTA and other rural counties and rural economies beyond. And with that, we see lots of infrastructure development within Dufferin County itself, but then opportunities around the future Highway 413 that's in development. It won't actually connect to Dufferin, but again, it'll bring more infrastructure nearby, which will help benefit the county. So moving on, and beyond those opportunities and growth, there's also lots of external pressures that Dufferin and all of Ontario, all of Canada are facing. And the key point these days that we hear a lot about, and since February we've been hearing nonstop about, are the trade and tariff concerns, and the US no longer being a reliable trading partner and an economic partner. And so that's caused huge amounts of just confusion, disruption, and things change week by week. Nobody knows what's going on. And so really the purpose, again, going back to the start of this presentation with our work here, is to help better understand, okay, what's going on, what are businesses actually dealing with, hear from businesses directly and understand, okay, are you being impacted by tariffs? And if so, how are you feeling those impacts? What's going on? Beyond the tariffs, a lot of these other 2 points are just continuing on from the challenges coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where businesses, and we heard this all across the board, are still dealing with supply chain challenges, whether it's still facing increased costs for machinery or other inputs, or just delays in sourcing materials and causing challenges, concerns around there, as well as skills and labor challenges, where lots of businesses that we heard from are challenged in finding the right and skilled labor. But then as well, things have eased a bit coming out of the pandemic with the labor market cooling off, but there's also a lot of challenges we heard from manufacturers, in particularly with challenges with immigration and changes at the federal level impacting, temporary foreign workers, and just ultimately not a lot of clarity being provided on what the status of some of their workers. And so moving on to the next slide here, with all those challenges and the opportunities for Dufferin, I really want to stress the benefits and the importance of taking a strategic lens and being strategic at the economic development level, with economic development, and in particularly with Dufferin working with such a diverse number of different communities that spans a pretty large size. And so we really here want to just emphasize that forward-thinking approach and being proactive, speaking with businesses and gathering that information to understand, okay, how could we make the best use of the limited resources that the county and the municipalities have in supporting businesses and driving economic development. And so here we have, economic development being undertaken by both the county and the municipalities. And that, from what we see here, is just really meant to be a complementary approach, where the local municipalities work directly with their local businesses, and they're serving as a business champion with those downtown storefronts. But at the county level, really taking that approach to drive a county-wide effort, develop a county-wide branding to tell that story of what's going on as a whole, and to support businesses and as well as attract additional investment. Moving on to the next slide here, and going into to our work specifically in a bit more detail. So as I mentioned before, really we wanted to consider a wide range of different sources here, and developing that economic baseline understanding of the county. And so beyond our interviews and online survey, we relied on a document review that we worked with the county to get a number of internal documents, review those, and consider those for developing our report. And then the most important piece being the interviews with 25 local businesses, as well as the online survey, and then complementing that with some secondary research. And so from there, and going on to our engagement with local businesses, we wanted to capture, a diverse range of different sectors across Dufferin County. We wanted to keep things representative to make sure we weren't just prioritizing one sector over the other. We wanted to speak to as many as we could out there and cover as much ground as possible. And really, these don't summarize perfectly each business that we talk to. Not everyone's going to fall into perfectly each of these, but overall, we could really summarize who we talk to into agricultural stakeholders, industrial and manufacturing businesses, tourism and recreation, construction, and then retail and services. And so going into a bit more detail into those businesses that we spoke with. So again, we wanted to capture, not only a wide range of different sectors, but we wanted proper coverage across Dufferin County as a whole. We wanted to make sure we weren't just talking to businesses that primarily were located in Orangeville or Shelburne or anywhere else. We wanted to get that broad coverage. And to summarize some of those 25 businesses that we spoke to a little bit more. So some key and preliminary insights here are that 53% of the businesses that we talked to were noted to us that they were indirectly impacted, or they were indirectly feeling the impacts of the recent tariff impacts. Beyond that, the number of employees that these represented were over 1,600 in total. And then lastly, Um, uh, 11% of them had told us that they had made major capital investments in the past 5 years to either expand or improve the efficiency of their businesses. And so here, to summarize some of the findings that we heard from businesses around their business and investment activity over the past 5 years on the left-hand side, and then into the future 5 to 10 year planning. What we saw in the past, or what we heard in the past 5 years from our stakeholders, was that manufacturers had noted quite a significant amount of investments that they were making, either to expand or launch new facilities, or improve efficiencies, invest in new machinery, new technology, new equipment. And so I think that speaks to a lot of coming out of the pandemic. Manufacturing was a very hot industry. There was a lot of activity going on. But if you look to on the right hand of the slide, we hadn't heard any plans from manufacturers into the next 5 to 10 years about any investments or projects that they were planning. A lot of that, from what we heard too, was because of the significant uncertainty there has been around tariffs and just not knowing ultimately what's going to happen, what are the impacts to the business going to be. And so that's going to slow down significantly any of those projects or investments that current or prospective manufacturers are thinking about coming into the county. But beyond that as well, so agricultural stakeholders that we talked to, and as you see on the slide here, we heard quite a bit of activity again from them, and into the future a little bit less so, but still pretty consistent moving forward here, where again, a lot of investment projects to either expand operations or a lot of investment into new machinery, better equipment, more efficiency, and the like. Technology, exactly. And beyond that, the biggest opportunity we heard about the future investment were from a lot of these tourism and recreation businesses that we spoke to, where a lot are planning ambitious projects and have very high hopes for what their businesses can ultimately become. But they also stress to us the challenges and concerns they're facing around making these investments into a reality, whether that's because of the market uncertainty from where they get to, or most importantly, from what we heard, was challenges around permitting and approvals from not only the local and municipal government level, but at the provincial level from conservation authorities and the like. Just a lot of lack of clarity ultimately around how to get those approvals, or what's going to be possible in the end. Moving on to the next slide. So again, some additional themes that we heard from stakeholders, and some of these I've covered on the previous slide here, but again, getting at that uneven permitting and approvals process that we heard from businesses. And again, just getting at not only this being heard from those in the tourism industry, but across the board, really, aware not a ton of communication at times about their applications, and just causing delays they thought unnecessarily about what they a lot of the time thought should be a fairly simple and straightforward investment, such as expanding a parking lot, or anything more complex as well, adding a new segment to the business and the building itself. Beyond that, though, and again on the tariffs overall, from what we heard, was not a ton of direct impacts where costs have been added and that's coming up on a specific line item in the financials, but again, indirect cost increases, which could likely be attributed or certainly be attributed to tariffs from a supplier down the line, or again, just a lot of uncertainty from, in a lot of cases, US customers are being more hesitant to buy from Canadian businesses because of that perception of, they don't know whether tariffs are going to come in at some point and cause a huge disruption to their orders and their finances ultimately. And so really just the threat of tariffs being there is causing massive issues, massive challenges that are likely going to be felt years into the future. Beyond that, I think workforce challenges, again, covered that. Just the ongoing skills challenges, specifically in the skills trades, remaining a challenge. What we heard overall is the labor market cooling off and things, finding skilled labor not being as challenging, but I think targeted and specific skills shortages still remain and are challenging, but overall things have cooled off. Beyond that, what we heard on the education and training ecosystem were that program offerings are there at the local level, but again, they're missing that skills or skilled trades focus, and that not providing a lot of the businesses we heard from the skills that they need for what they're missing and struggling to get. But beyond that, and I guess I think the investment in modernization, I covered a bit here, but I think the one positive that we really heard pretty much constantly across the board was that Dufferin County overall just being a very community-oriented place to do business, the community being very supportive, local residents very passionate about supporting local businesses specifically, and buying into the Canada made and supporting Canadian businesses as well as Dufferin specific businesses. And that's really felt across at the county level, at the local municipals and beyond. And so moving in here to get into a bit more on the agricultural sector that we heard from stakeholders more specifically. But I think a key point and a key challenge that we heard from these agricultural businesses, these farms, is that, coming out of the pandemic, both crop prices and product prices for agricultural businesses were rising in parallel with input prices that they needed to spend on to do their business. However, coming into 2023, that shifted where food prices came back down as the market cooled, but especially machinery costs have remained elevated, and they're not showing no signs of going back down to normal to what they were pre-pandemic, and even slightly increasing, especially with the impact of tariffs here today.
Probably you shouldn't say food, you should probably say commodity prices, really.
Mhm.
That's what went down.
I don't think my farm gate prices are commensurate with what's happening in the grocery store right now. I'm not complaining, it's just.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction to make. But moving on here and getting into a bit more on what we heard from agricultural stakeholders is that the landscape is changing across the board. We heard about a lot of industry consolidation, not only with farms themselves, but with suppliers that local farms rely on. It's becoming more challenging to find a local butcher or other businesses along the supply chain that the farms and agricultural businesses rely on as they consolidate and move into more centralized locations outside of Dufferin. And that gets into as well the gaps with local suppliers because of this consolidation here, just making it more challenging and as a result more costly to find these supplier businesses to support the business overall. Otherwise, we also heard some big changes going on around transitional changes through farm ownership and across the generations, where as owners of farms start to look towards retirement and pass along their businesses into the family, it becomes challenging to sell or hand off the entire farm altogether to, say, one or two children of the family, as some of the children move elsewhere into other businesses, and they still have entitlement to some amount of inheritance. And so in a lot of cases, what we heard from farmers was the farm overall, there can't be any agreement that can be struck. And so in a lot of cases, the farm gets sold off and just consolidated into a larger operation, or just and ended altogether. But again, what we heard, a consistent theme from our agricultural stakeholders, was again that strong collaborative community, lots of opportunities to have their voices heard, or just come together as a community to talk about the challenges they're facing or overcoming any challenges in the market. Moving on here, and to get at all of that, and as well speak to the next steps of what some of this information here we talked about today will go into, is we'll continue to for KPMG's work, we're continuing to pull together our comprehensive economic report as we bring forward more secondary research and additional data to complement these initial findings. And with that, we'll be bringing everything together to develop a list of recommendations for how the county can better support its businesses. That then leads us into a presentation to council, and from there, we're pulling together a investment attraction and what would be better titled attraction and retention strategy, focusing on both seeing how we can attract new businesses to the county, as well as support existing businesses to keep them there and invest and expand and be successful ultimately. But with that, I will close off and end it there and open up to any questions.
Also, if there's any questions on the floor here, Kevin, can you just reiterate them so our online
Yes,
can hear
yes.
them? Yeah. Is any on the chat?
So you talked about the agriculture sector, but you didn't talk about anybody else. Are we going to see some manufacturing results there too, and some of the things that could be done for the manufacturing?
For sure, and we can be more specific in some of our findings for what we heard. Again, we've just on this initial pass here, just looked at consolidating most of the data to bring forward what we've heard and hear about some of these general trends across the different sectors. But we can we'll be partialing out those, what we heard findings more specifically to manufacturing as well.
Okay.
Did you capture any of the economic activity and small scale manufacturing that is taking place in other more northerly regions of this county, largely by Mennonite Amish people that have some kind of a shop, and some of them have very intricate manufacturing facilities and high-tech equipment? Is that captured in this report?
And I guess just to reiterate that question, so the question was whether our report is considering manufacturing investment in more northern rural communities through smaller scale operations on Mennonite Amish farms. And to that point, I think that is a challenging point to capture, just because the data itself through secondary sources doesn't always capture that, and it's not easily identifiable. And I think overall at the municipal level across Canada more broadly, and in more rural communities specifically, data can be a challenging area to get specifics on. And so that's really a big part of these interviews that we undertook, was to build to what limited data was available to go and collect our own to get an understanding. And so I think it's tough to partial out those specific small scale investments specifically, but wherever we can through interviews and whatever's available through secondary data, we can identify those and highlight those, I would say.
You didn't review any one of them in particular, did you?
I can take that question. So we tried, and
Well, I expect most of them were kind of applying.
they
in contravention of
exactly.
the Act and the other things.
So yeah, I did try and get an interview with our Mennonite community, and we had very little uptake on that. But a way in which we can sort of capture some of that data in our report is through building permit activity at the local level. Oftentimes when our Mennonite, well, sometimes let's hope, we could capture some of it at least in terms of building permits that are obtained for shops on farms. And that could give us a bit of an indication as to that level of activity.
Are you saying that a livestock barn is not necessarily a livestock barn?
Your guess would be as good as mine.
Anyway, maybe this is a subject that's best left for our wise municipal fathers and mothers that run the affairs of the different jurisdictions.
Would you be able to talk a little bit about what kinds of questions you asked in your interview? Like, were you able to determine workforce and you were able to determine inputs that they were buying from other sources? Like, what sorts of questions did you ask these folks?
Yeah, and the question was about the questions that we posed during our interviews with local businesses, and so to answer that, we'll definitely provide a list of the interview, or I guess we can provide the interview guides in the appendix of the eventual report. But we ultimately focused on asking just about the business and its operations broadly at a high level. You know, what's the focus? Who do they sell to? How many employees? You know, what's the range of skills and occupations within the business? Square footage and the like, and then asking specifically about those questions around the trade and tariff challenges. You know, what inputs does your business rely on? Where are those coming from? Does your business sell to international markets? If so, you know, who do you sell to? And the breakdown of, okay, if it's the US, what percentage of sales are made to the US typically, as well as asking about, again, challenges or you know, opportunity with that they see with operating within Dufferin specifically.
Just have a comment. Sylvia Jones, our MPP, her Christmas card always shows a banner shop local on the envelope. I think it's a good reminder for us to do that.
Sure. And again, really can't emphasize how frequent we heard that from businesses and how they felt and how they felt about that being an important benefit of operating in Dufferin is that community support and, you know, the passion from the community to support those local Dufferin businesses is a really distinguishing factor compared to a lot of other places in Ontario.
Tourism helps too.
For sure.
Is there a question in the chat? I'm finding your slides almost impossible to read. They're so small.
Yeah, I don't,
Another time I would
Yeah,
love to see you use twice the real
Yeah.
estate for one point.
Can we get copies of that?
yes, so
Yes.
Everything, the recording and the slides will be available on our website, and I'll also email them to everyone as well. Someone was typing, but they've stopped. So nothing yet. No questions on the chat right now. There is a comment from Lisa. Do you want to read it out, or did you want me to read it out?
Yeah, sure. And just one comment from Lisa saying exactly why we need upper tier economic development and planning. We need the 1,000-foot view and an overarching strategies, structures, and policies. So thank you, Lisa, for that comment.
Was there anything that really surprised you that came through the interviews? What people thought would be very helpful that the county could do for them?
That's a good question. And so for the online,
Speed cameras and children.
yeah,
Third one.
yeah. And for the online folks, the question was, what surprised us most coming out of the interviews and from what we heard from businesses? And that, I think I'd say on the tariff piece, just how much of an impact businesses were feeling without anything much happening with the tariffs. You know, we've heard just constant talk and threats and just back and forth, and everybody's sick of it, obviously. But I think in a lot of cases, we didn't hear much impacts, even with manufacturers specifically, but those indirect impacts where, you know, customers, either domestically or within Canada, or suppliers were facing impacts because of those threats. And that was affecting the business ultimately, was probably
It's hard
my biggest.
to quantify, so my prices, I indicated, are down considerably, maybe 25%. And my costs are still going up.
Probably 40%.
But my costs are predicated, are determined on the Chicago Board of Trade, which is in Chicago. And, you know, I think there are a lot of businesses worldwide that are avoiding the US store and trying to do business elsewhere, but it impacts us because that's still where a large part of our price is determined. So can I draw a one-to-one line on that? No. Can I go to the federal government and say, we have a problem here? Yes, but they're not usually very sympathetic. And the other thing is the US government is subsidizing to no end their farmers that we have to compete with no address. So they had this big beautiful bill. I don't know if anybody's been hearing about the big beautiful bill, but it's just pumped out another 10 to 12 billion dollars to those poor American farmers who are hurt by trade wars. Well, who started the trade wars? So we are being damaged, but it's hard to say specifically how much that is. And yeah, we don't have any mechanism in this country to adjust for that kind of trade-related damage. We've never had this before that I'm aware of.
And I think that's a good point overall, and specifically on your mention of working with and speaking to the federal government or even the provincial government advocating for better support because of these realities here. And you know, I know we didn't present a list of recommendations here today, but I'll tell you for sure one of our recommendations to the county will be having that focus with economic development of being an advocate for local businesses and for local stakeholders to be a point of contact where the county can be very plugged in with provincial stakeholders or federal stakeholders, whether it's with MPs, MPPs, or organizations like FedDev Ontario, to say, okay, this is what our local businesses are dealing with. What can you do here? Make sure that those points are being heard, as well as, you know, get that information from these federal, provincial stakeholders to know, okay, what options for support are also out there as well.
That's a little bit of a side point to that, but it escapes me, but if it comes back.
For sure, please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you come across any opportunities or any feedback where the Dufferin Board of Trade can fill some of these gaps or address any of the issues that, you know, the county might not be dealing with and the municipality might not be dealing with? So is there any space that you see for the Dufferin Board of Trade?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if I can answer that specifically here. That's probably something we can definitely take away and think more about. We did talk to the Dufferin Board of Trade as part of this work here, and they're obviously play an important role in the community. So that's definitely an important consideration for us here with this report.
Well, that was enough to jog my memory. It's not related at all to your point, but the biggest thing that's coming up right now is the renegotiation of CUSMA or USMCA. So most of our trade still occurs tariff-free because we have CUSMA. Now, who knows what's going to happen? One day Trump says this, the next day he says that. So it's just a big unknown. I don't know. Nobody knows.
You'll never know.
Until it happens. And I keep thinking, well, we can fear the worst, or we can just carry on. Most of us are not sitting around twiddling your thumbs trying to wait what Trump's going to do. We have enough other things to do. But we are very cautious. Like, I'm not reinvesting. So there's a lot of work that's not getting done. I have a bit of a reinvestment plan for my business, but I'm not reinvesting because of the,
Uncertainty.
yeah, and I can't do a lot of reinvesting when I'm making next to nothing. I'm just trying to stay viable as a farmer. I'm thinking that somewhere down the road, because of all the shaking down that we're having in our economy, there's gonna be opportunity for whoever's been able to survive. And it's a very sad thing to say, but there's winners and losers, not only here locally, but throughout the country and internationally.
And yeah, it's again, that's a key part of it is that uncertainty and just no one knows how this is going to play out or what's going to happen because I mean, again, it just changes week to week. And so no business can afford to make a massive or even a small scale investment if so much is on the line. And it could be just irrelevant, not work out because of some stupid tariff proposal that comes through.
Right, and you might have heard this from me or somebody else, but we can't pick up our farm and move to Mexico or to the US unless we come to the first state. So farmers are notorious for ongoing reinvestment in their farms that benefits a lot of local people. So I think you'll see a fact that could be measured economically that a lot of that reinvestment isn't being done.
For sure.
It's not that we don't want to, but
Yeah.
Last week, we had a significant conversation around the council table at the county about what we could do better and more targeted. I'm hoping your report will kind of help us focus that conversation a little better. So that there are things that maybe we can let the lower tiers do. Some have the capacity, but some do not. Like, and this is where there's haves and have-nots even in the county. And so I'd like some clarity through some of this as well. On what we could do to focus and sharply focus what capacity we do have at the county and how that would support lower tiers.
No, thank you for that. And yeah, that definitely is a consideration we're taking into this report here, as well as the investment and attraction strategy is just really and when you think about it too, any businesses that come and locate in the county or currently operate in the county, if say you're in Shelburne or wherever else, you might be located there, but you're working with businesses and other suppliers all over the county. You're relying on county infrastructure that's located outside of your specific local municipality. And so again, really that's part of the benefit of that region or county-wide economic development focus is thinking about or highlighting those strengths and understanding, where improvements can be made for businesses all across.
Sorry, did we look at the service sector? I see that kind of not popping out here, and yet so many people are in that service sector, not in hospitality or in recreation necessarily, but in, building and all those trades. I don't see that here. Have you pulled any of that out?
So we did have some focus on the service sector. Wasn't a huge segment of the businesses we spoke to, and maybe that'd be good to go back to our stakeholder summary.
So we focused on speaking to construction as well as sort of the overall, what is the economic climate of real estate? And that was speaking directly to an individual that was involved in the construction of residential, but also another individual that was involved in the sale of residential and industrial commercial. So a smaller sort of focus on that, but that was an area that we did try to include within our work.
Yeah, again, apologies for the small font on that, but those would be covered. Some of those would be covered in our construction bucket for the sectors we spoke to, as well as retail and services there.
So another thing to note with this particular work, just because it was county focused, we did want to focus on mid to large size businesses. And so a lot of the service providers that Councilor Horner, you may be thinking of in terms of financial, like the banks and all that sort of stuff, those are along main streets on, say, Broadway or in other Shelburne's Main Street. And so those weren't necessarily a focus of our work, just because that wasn't the intention of this. We mainly wanted to focus on those that were the mid to large size businesses and understanding how at the county level we would be able to support those businesses. At the local level, the main streets are really their bread and butter, and that wasn't an area that we touched on.
Thank you.
I'm just going to quickly read 2 comments from Bill online. His first comment was, I agree with Leo, the non-supply managed agriculture are in holding pattern until Kuzma is figured out. And the second comment was, there's lots of agricultural products that come into this county, grocery stores and etc. But somehow we need more local supply if possible. Just some comments.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for those comments.
Yeah, I really appreciate a lot of entrepreneurs who try to get into that space. But there are very few that have been able to do it successfully in terms of a full-time farmer, unless you know different than Janet. It's a nice idea. People like it. People like buying local. But to get to where they could be a viable business, and I don't even think it takes that many acres. They don't need that many acres to do it. It's just, I don't know what mitigates against it. I don't know whether that came up in any of your survey work. There was a guy that, Jamie Richardson, I don't know if you knew him. He was one of the most successful at it here locally. But I guess he has nobody there to take over that business. So I guess he's just feeling it back. But I think there are people that are interested in it, but we can't make it development. I also wonder how we could network that with food banks, Heather, and the need that many people have in our community. So I think there could be some brainstorming around that. And I have a farm right next to Shelburne, and I thought before, well, I could have 5 acres of community gardens here. There's enough development in Shelburne where there's just sitting there that could be made into community gardens. I think we talked to the entrepreneurs. Heather and I talked about a property there on Centennial Road, but I'm going to run anywhere. So this is maybe where you're getting into your talk, so I don't want to hijack your talk. But continues to be something I think of. I mean, if somebody wants a bushel of corn, I can help you out that way, or wheat, or soybeans, or canola, or a bale of hay.
And I think that's an important point too, that we did hear from, was that there were people moving here from outside the county interested in starting up farms, but again, it being very challenging, very hard work. Some people thinking they could do it as, like a part-time job with their full-time job and just not working out. But then as well as, agricultural stakeholders talking to us about exploring opportunities to sell to local restaurants, grocery stores and the like. But it just being very challenging to work with, like some of these massive corporations that have their established supply chains. They're sourcing everything from, the main distribution facility, and not even like, their corporate policies allowing for any of this external local sourcing.
Yeah, well, they're just not even set up to have a local buyer. They're done across their chain. So, yeah, the whole thing is really set up to accomplish that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Sorry, Kevin, I'm going to cut you off there so I can let Heather.
Yes, sorry.
Be. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. Awesome. Forward to the final report.
Yes.
And I know it's going to spur growth here by 15%.
Yes.
You're on it. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. I'm here presenting on behalf of Dufferin Food Share and the Orangeville Food Bank. The first slide, hunger hurts Ontario. We lose a lot when we don't feed our residents because our residents can't be productive. You want to flip to the next one? Yep. So, Ane Bojo, thank you for having us. In the spirit of reconciliation, we are learning a new Anishinaabe word to honor the Treaty 18 and Treaty 19 lands that we reside on. We do not read our land acknowledgements every day because I think it becomes background noise. So, Ane Bojo. So if we want to move that to the next one, please, and thank you. Awesome. So just so that you have an understanding of the information that I'm presenting today, I will be presenting on Orangeville, and I'll be presenting on Grand Valley. We were lucky enough that the Grand Grand Valley Food Bank came to us in January of 24. And we partnered with them and developed the Dufferin Food Share. And we were lucky enough that over the summer, we were able to take on a lease at 27 Main Street North, which is the old schoolhouse, not the schoolhouse. We've set up the food bank there, as well as community services offices out of that building. And we hope to bring in more community services to provide access to the people living in Grand Valley, because transportation is a problem throughout the county. So pop up to the next one. So the scary chart. Bottom line was where we started off in 2015. When I first started in October of 2015, we saw, I think that says 364. I think that's what that number says. Individuals in a month. And last month we saw 1,604. So the growth in accessing food bank is banana pants. 24 versus 25 has been an 8% increase, but it's been 333 if you look at 10 years worth of growth, and that's pretty crazy. If you see the spike at the very top there, or sort of middle of the chart, that was the month that COVID was called. And if you watch that spike go down, that's when we put in income supports across the province to support individuals. We can solve poverty. It's not that hard. We kind of know how to do it already because we got the data. For the food bank, food donations are down 22% right now. And I think it's because people do not have it within them to give. And while you were talking about tariffs and the impact on that, it's impacting everybody's household budget, but also the uncertainty. Do I want to give away a whole bunch in case I don't have it for myself later on? It's quite scary out there right now. However, again, with tariffs, our non-perishable food spending is up 77% because we're not getting the donations to match that. And our perishable spending is up 23%. So our food purchasing budget this year will be about $400,000, which is a lot of money to fundraise for. If I were to provide proteins, 3 proteins a month to each family that accesses the food bank, I would have to add an additional $165,000 to $200,000 to my budget for that.
So did you just say, Heather, that you're trying to raise $400,000 for your annual budget to buy?
No, I'm trying to raise 1.5 million for my annual budget. Of that, 400,000 of that is purchasing. That's right. And without a building, I cannot do what I do, because we moved about 700,000 pounds of food in and out of the food bank last year. That requires warehousing and staffing for food safety and all the rest of that good stuff. So it's an operation. We also employ 10 people. It would be wonderful to say that you could do what we do strictly on volunteers, of which I have 250. And of that, last year, they donated 27,000 hours to the food bank, which is 15 full-time staff. But we cannot do it just on volunteers, because ultimately somebody has to make a decision. And I love my volunteers. I've got the best. I'll put them up against anybody, but they get to have a life because they're retired now. And it's hard for them to be there 365 days a year. So overall heat use map. So what you're looking at there is overall access between January to December of 2025. So to date, we have supported almost 24,000 visits between Orangeville and Grand Valley. And to the right, you can see what our service areas are. The purple on the right is the boundaries of the Orangeville Food Bank, and the blue on the left are the boundaries for Grand Valley. We serve a large swath of the county right now, providing services. And the other ones are the boundaries of the other food banks that we butt up against. Part of those boundaries are set through Feed Ontario, and part of it, if they're not members of Feed Ontario, are just historical boundaries that we've always worked out with other food banks, so that we're not double servicing areas. So if you want to pop off, thank you. So again, from a heat map, this is seniors. You can see that majority of the seniors are focused within Orangeville, with the bluer pockets and sort of the slightly denser colored areas being other pockets. So some of that is Grand Valley. You can see that Laurel's on the map. My eyes are not good enough to see to back there. And 10% of our clients now are seniors, and that made up 3,223 total visits, making up about 350 unique individuals. Kiddos are making up 37% of our clients right now, and they represent almost 9,000 total visits and about 900 unique individuals within us. Same thing, the map sort of reflect, you can see the color dots are very similar across. Yeah, so. All right, from an ethnicity standpoint, this has changed a lot actually since I started 10 years ago. And so, you know, individuals who are Caucasian make up a large portion. But what we're seeing right now is different ethnicities moving into our area. The prices are different here than they are in the city. Hopeful that they can sort of save a little bit on housing. Some of them are coming up here for education. But that also changes the food needs of the food bank. So where I couldn't have given away dry beans 10 years ago, I used to make jokes about dried macaroni and chickpeas. Now I actually have to go out and purchase them, which is very different for us. Ginger root, hot peppers, halal proteins, okra, tomatoes. Those are things that are necessary for us to be able to provide the food to individuals. I could feed everybody in Orangeville and Grand Valley right now with oatmeal. You'd die of scurvy first, but I could do it. And you wouldn't be hungry. You wouldn't be healthy, but you wouldn't be hungry, right?
Did you just say you wouldn't be healthy eating oatmeal?
Strictly oatmeal, strictly oatmeal. Okay, because I eat oatmeal every morning. Yeah, exactly, for breakfast.
Bummed up.
Exactly. But it's not enough to have what I think people need in the food bank. What we have to do is find the foods that the people need within the food bank. We have people with dire medical conditions. If you've ever had anybody with kidney disease, that is a brutal diet to try and manage. Diabetes, or heaven forbid, you are food insecure and you have your celiac, you have celiac's disease or something like that. All of those things need to be managed, but it comes at a cost. And it's becoming harder and harder for us to manage that. Now, while we can buy local tomatoes from Besley's, which is awesome, and I know that Carol Maitland is on the call here from the Shelburne Economic Development crew, and we have a co-project with some community gardens up there and raising different things next year. Part of that will be okra and hot peppers and things like that, because those are the things that we need and they're expensive to buy. But things like ginger root, a little harder to get locally and that sort of thing. So if you want to pop off to the next one. So 600,000 pounds of food was distributed to clients, but we did do over 700,000 pounds of food. Not everything that comes through the back door can be distributed to clients. We love you all, but cleaning out Great Aunt Ethel's closet and thinking that it's coming to the food bank, please stop. So it's brutal. So we just got hot chocolate like a month ago, and the best before date is, I think it's 1995.
Oh my God.
Right. The first year I was there, I sorted a box of Kraft Dinner from January 29th of 1989. 1989. Okay, we appreciate the food, but if all you ever were given at a food bank was food past its best before date, there's no dignity in that, and it makes you feel like garbage. We're giving you garbage, so that's what you get to feel like. Not that I myself, and I'm going to say this publicly so my husband will now know, may have forgotten my husband's birthday 8 years ago, and I made an 8-year-old cake mix from the pantry. Everybody survived. Everybody's fine. Not saying it's you can't do it, but if that's all you ever got, there's no dignity attached from there. So to speak to, from a local economic perspective, to speak to where we purchase from, we do purchase from Peace Valley Ranch and Lone Lane Acres. We purchase cattle from there and have it put into ground beef. Fiddlefoot Farms, Lennox Farms, Grand River, Besley's, Wild Meadows, and Chicken Tikka. Some of those are proteins, some of those are vegetables. We try really hard to buy local. But again, for me, it's a cost. I want to purchase more from Carl and Natalie and from Lone Lane Acres. But and I think we're now at $6 a pound. it becomes almost, I just can't even do it at this point to manage that right now. So 51% of what we distribute is perishable, including milk, eggs, produce, and proteins. That's critical. We know that when you put good food into a body, you get good things out of a body. And again, back to the oatmeal, a lot of what people think about in a food bank is processed and prepared foods, and we know that will not, prolong your life. It comes at a cost. 60% increase this year in the number of employed people accessing the food bank over 2024. So the MHC stands for March Hunger Count. That is a national count of individuals accessing a food bank. It is done every March. You'll hear about it from Food Banks Canada, but it's been a 1900% increase since 2015. So everybody coming and driving past the food bank, I just had somebody tackle me on this a couple of weeks ago. What about the cars at the food bank? I've seen the nice cars. They're scamming the system. They're not scamming the system. You can't give the car back once you lose your job, right? You just can't do it. And if you give the car back, you still owe the payments, and now you can't get to your next job. So there's a lot of people accessing the food bank look a lot like all of us sitting around here at the table.
What is the requirement to be able to access the food bank?
You breathe.
So anyone can go?
Anyone can go. I've had people come in and make $100,000 and then a month later declare bankruptcy. Okay, so you don't know what somebody else's story is. And just because you were doing okay last year and you can show me some kind of tax form or something like that does not mean your partner didn't have a stroke this year.
And how do you gather the information? When they come in, are you asking them for proof of residency, or how do you do it? Yeah,
absolutely. So when they come in, they have to have identification based on where they live. It has to be current. And then we do ask for demographic information, who's in the family, birth dates, that kind of thing. We ask that for statistical purposes anyways. Nobody would walk through my door and go through the rigmarole that you have to, and at times often wait 3 hours for food if you didn't need to be there. And if for the 1 or 2 people or the percentages that are perhaps misusing the food bank, I don't disagree that it doesn't happen occasionally. There's a bigger problem there. And if we can be there for those people when they get to the point where they need help with whatever that bigger problem is, then that's what we're supposed to be doing. And as through a business lens, you manage for the majority, you do not manage for the exception.
Right.
So, and generally, people are good.
So you have people that come out of the area and you kind of decline there?
No, I will feed everybody the first time, because when you walk through my door and then I tell you, oh, no, I can't feed you, just go away and find the next service, you're already hungry. You have given up so much by the time you get to the food bank. You've used your family resources, you've used your credit, you've sold things. I've had many moms come in and tell me that they've sold all their furniture to pay the rent that month, and they'll just have to sleep on the floor because that's the way it goes. So we'll feed everybody the first time, and then we'll give you resources to where you live moving forward. So, but we do collect data so that doesn't become a trend. 37% of those accessing our services are children. Okay, thanks. Am I getting close again to time? You know me.
Oh,
I'm a
no, we're
mouthpiece.
good.
No, I'm good.
Yep.
All right. So food banks are in crisis across Canada. 1 in 4 individuals are food insecure right now. Some studies would actually put that number closer to 40%. Food banks are not funded by provincial or federal governments. They're primarily funded by donors. Okay, and 7% of my donations that come to the food bank are funded through large donors. And another 7 to 8%, depending on the year, comes from the municipal government, which I very much appreciate the county support, as well as the town of Orangeville. And some of the smaller municipalities also donate to the food bank on an annual basis. Provincial egg organizations already donate to the food banks. I get eggs through the egg farmers of Ontario. I get beef from the cattle farmers, that sort of thing. So there's already those agreements in place. They're doing the best they can to support us, and those numbers tend to go up on an annual basis. We appreciate that. And then we also have provincial and national partnerships already with the existing grocery stores. Every grocery store in our area donates to us, as well as some of the smaller grocery stores and providers, like the lovely gentleman who we always call the photocopier guy, who has a bakery and a lamb farm up in Flesherton, but goes to the market, and his name escapes me. He's delightful. He donates to the food bank every week for what he doesn't sell, which is perfect. And as the crisis grows, we're not going to be able to donate our way out of this. It's not possible. As the need grows, how will I raise $3 million in a year? I don't know. I have no idea how that's going to work. So policy change is the only solution. So we pop to the last one. So food insecurity is defined as inadequate or insecure access to food due to the financial constraints. And funds are at the heart of this issue. But food security is a spectrum of need, and ensuring that we have an integrated approach to food access across the county benefits all residents. I'm incredibly excited about the data that the Wellington Guelph Dufferin Public Health has done. They've done a Dufferin specific food research project over the summer. We are 2/3 of the way through listening to that data. And I think that will help us from a committee perspective through the Food Access Committee to build out a system that integrates both local agriculture plus local businesses and the ability, Leo, like you said, about growing your own food. Right. So we would love to have more space, but we also then have to have the volunteers. That in itself becomes a bit of a challenge. So some of the supportive policy options we could be looking at is the importance of local food systems. I've just sort of mentioned that. Ensuring that community gardens and urban farms are included in zoning and planning for grocery stores and farmers markets in all neighborhoods improves access to nutritious food, especially in underserved areas. Urban sprawl versus dense development. Protecting farmland often pushes development into denser compact forms, which can support sustainability and local food, whereas sprawl consumes prime agricultural land. We can't afford to lose any more of what we have. And economic versus public health goals. Land use planning often prioritizes economic development, sometimes at the expense of food security, environmental health, and access to nutritious foods, creating gaps in policy. I understand that from this committee's perspective, economic planning is really important, but we have to start thinking about how we're going to protect the people in all of this as well. Food insecurity grows. It's grown 333% in Dufferin County alone in 10 years. What does this look like in 5 years or 10 years past that when I have retired? And nobody's addressing it at a policy level at the provincial or federal level. And if we don't do something about this, the problem just continues to grow. And I don't think we have a solution to fix it. And then land acquisition versus expropriation. Large-scale land acquisition for development can displace rural communities, restrict their access to productive land and water, and negatively impact local food security and livelihoods. We can see that in the north end of the county. That this has been a problem in the past, and I assume it'll be a problem again now, and it is real hard to fight. It's money and cost and all the rest of that stuff. And if we lose more land at the top end of the county, we lose farmers, we lose our livelihood, the ability to feed our people. So from a food lens, we need to ensure that people have the money they need to purchase food. That's at the heart of this. We have to look at policies and wage policies to feed the people. When you looked at that original graph where you saw that it dipped, that was $2,000 a month that solved food insecurity. That took me down from 900 down to less than 500 in the snap of a finger, just like that in a month. This problem is solvable. And when we do that, we also ensure that things like hospitals and perhaps the criminal justice system and all the rest of that, we're paying huge money into that. If we fix this, we don't have to pay as much money on that side of the equation. On to the last. Perfect. And that is the end of me. So thanks so much. I appreciate that. This is a big problem. Yes,
That's your question, Heather?
Absolutely.
You mentioned policy.
Yep.
And I think I heard you say that nobody at the federal or provincial level is engaged on this issue. So there aren't individual MPPs or MPs that are engaged in trying to do something,
There are some independent MPPs that have supported the work of Feed Ontario in what we present down at Queen's Park. But food doesn't land, so food insecurity food does not land in any division of any ministry. So we're very thankful that they have invested in the school food program. We think that is fantastic. They have put in the increases for ODSP to match inflation. Again, that's a positive. That's moved forward. But in general, there isn't. We can't talk to any one specific ministry to say, hey, this is what we need.
but there is advocacy going on at the Food Banks Ontario level or.
Absolutely. Carolyn Stewart is the CEO of Food Banks Canada or Feed Ontario. She and her team, Amanda King, Ashley Kwan, are doing great work advocating. There are 2 days a year where we go down to Queen's Park and advocate with local MPs or MPPs at the federal level. Kirsten Beardsley is the CEO of Food Banks Canada. She also is advocating for changes. But if we don't put it in now, you know what policy takes to, it trickles down. It takes years to trickle down and affect the people. We have to make changes now. Food banks won't survive this. 70% of them right now don't think they have the resources to keep going, right? They don't have enough food on the shelves to keep meeting the need. Yeah, we're in crisis. How delightful is that speech? Everybody loves hearing from Hev.
I have some questions.
Sure.
So you said children was a big group.
Mhm.
Is that just children or is that children that come with families?
Children that come with families,
Yeah.
0 to 18, although they can come independently. About 5 years ago, no, maybe about 3 years ago, I had 3 11-year-olds come in asking for food, brought their report cards to prove they lived where they lived because their mom was really struggling and they wanted to try and help out. And the mom didn't feel, she felt a huge sense of shame coming to the food bank.
And do you find families are coming for longer periods?
Absolutely.
How has that changed?
So that's one of the trends that we're seeing through Feed Ontario and Food Banks Canada, that previous they may come a couple of times within the year. And now at my food bank, people are coming at least 10 times within a 12-month period. So that's so they're needing it for longer than they used to, that's for sure.
I saw that the Grand Valley building has office space for rent.
They do.
Is that like an income generating initiative?
We hope so. We are lucky that ODSP has come to that on Tuesdays. This won't make me popular, and the bail fund is at the food bank, just in case. But ODSP does not pay for office space. So the provincial government doesn't help me, but I'm giving them space for ODSP. No, it's fine. It's fine. Anyways, however, to be fair, I'm very, very excited that ODSP has come to the Valley to be able to be there for the residents because it's very difficult. The other office is in Guelph, right? And I think they're here at the county. They've made space at the Lord Dufferin Center. So we're very excited that they're moving their operations out into the community. That's important.
Are there any other income generating plans that the food bank has, or are you not going there?
So we have tried social enterprise before. It's not as self-sustaining as we would like it to be. So with our community market right now, we go to Shelburne, Orangeville, and Grand Valley. We sell produce at retail, 30% of retail and 50% of retail. At this point, I can pay for the produce that we purchase and sell. I'm making between $6,000 and $7,000 a year, but the staff person that runs that program is about $20,000. So I'm still about $15,000 shy on that, and being asked more and more for opportunities like that. And through grants are fantastic. We very much appreciate them. But often you don't get working grants, you get capital. You've got to try something new to get the money, and it becomes harder to keep the existing programs running. So I agree. Good questions. Thank you.
So if I'm gonna be talking to my MP or my MPP during the next couple of weeks,
Yep.
what message would you want me to convey to that person?
I want to focus provincially on more affordable housing and set the rate of affordable housing. What is that, right? I've got a guy coming to the food bank who's paying $4,700 a month in his mortgage. I have somebody else who's paying 10. So really moving forward with affordable housing. And I think that's just critical. And there's many different kinds of affordable housing. The county has just done some work on affordable housing, and I've sat on that committee and we've looked at all different kinds of options. The second one is right now, somebody who's on OW makes $733 a month. So you can't live. There's not one of us that could pay our bills on $733 a month. You couldn't even find a place to rent in Dufferin County for that. So we need to start looking at income supports that are more realistic. That rate hasn't raised since 2018. It took a huge cut in the 80s and 90s and has never recovered. If you become homeless on OW, you get half of that cut for shelter. So now, then when we make the comment, get a job. How do you get a job on $350 a month? You barely can afford food. You aren't housed. You don't have money for hygiene, for haircuts, for clothing, for laundry, all of that stuff. But we yell, get a job. That's bad words strung together in a line right there is what that is. And it's not okay. So we have to start looking at how we support the people. We've got income studies that show that when you support individuals, it lowers the need for hospitalization. It lowers the crime rate. What would you do to feed your kids? Anything you had to, right? So if I only had $733 or $1,000 a month, would I steal for my kids? Damn right I would. Would I get charged? Yes, I probably would. But you take the chance. So we create more problems when we don't support the people. We have to get back to better policy planning. So affordable housing, and let's start looking at the income programs and making sure that when they do go out and able to find a job, that we don't cut it. So at $733, you can make $200 before we take half of it off you after that. It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't work for that.
So Heather, if you are on Say Ontario Works.
Yep.
And you don't have an address, can you access the food bank?
Absolutely you can.
Okay.
And if you are unhoused, you can come to the food bank every week versus twice a month, because you don't have the same ability to house food as if you did if you were housed. Yeah.
But you do require some form of ID. That's the only.
If you were to walk in and say that I was unhoused the first time and that sort of thing, we absolutely would feed you without you. You have 3 opportunities to provide ID at the food bank. And if at that point it's not working, then we ask who we can reach out to help us with this piece, right? Because obviously there's a bigger problem here that we need to address.
There's a question online, Heather.
Sure.
I can read it up for you.
Yeah.
It's from Lisa. I volunteer at my local food bank, and an issue that I have personally is that when fresh vegetables and fruit are donated, or community garden donates, for example, people don't know what to do with it or how easily to cook it. And then some do not have the means to cook. And sometimes I end up taking vegetables home versus throwing them out. Do you have that issue? And if so, how do you address it?
Absolutely. So I would say that the majority of our people do have excellent cooking skills. It's not an issue. The challenge is capacity. You don't have an oven, you don't have pots and pans because you've had to move a whole bunch of times and you didn't get to keep all of that stuff. So that does become a challenge. Or what I've seen more of lately is seniors who are getting older and their family is requesting they don't cook, please. Don't turn the stove on because it's dangerous. Or they don't have the physicality within their body or the site and that sort of thing. So when we get vegetables that we can't use, we use them in our community kitchen. We turn it into soups. We freeze them, blanch them and freeze them so that they're more accessible because you know, a bag of frozen corn is so much more accessible than cobs of corn and how you store it. If there are vegetables that even go past that, then we have local farmers who come and pick it up use it for animal feed and that sort of thing. Our waste in general sits just under 3% of what comes into the food bank.
Are you still doing the vending machines?
We are still doing the vending machines, and in fact, so we still have ones in the bottom of the Orangeville Library. We are just moving one in next week. Snell's is moving it for us because they're incredibly heavy. So he's donating that, and that is going to 30 Center Street. And that will hold fresh produce for people. Everything in it will be a quarter. And then we've also received money from RBC, as well as the J.B. Bickle Foundation, to do a separate vending machine at the Grand Valley Library. So we're really trying to find ways to get food out to the people, because frankly, I don't actually have the space anymore to get more people into the food bank. And it is more accessible if I work to get food out to the community versus food in to my space. Okie dokie, I'm done.
That one in the library is used a lot.
It is. It is. We've seen families waiting for us to deliver because you can get a meal for $1, right?
Yeah.
And for some, that's really, really critical to be able to access food. People wouldn't use us if they had any other choice. And often, even once they've used us, they'll donate to us back again, right? Yeah, we see the very best of donors, the very best of clients, and the very best of volunteers and staff at the food bank. You'd think it would be sad, but there's a hoot ton of laughter there. We have a great time at the food bank. It's getting harder and harder to hear the stories sitting across the table, because they sound, the lad who ended up getting addicted to medication from a car accident, it's easy to have happen. The gentleman had a stroke and was denied benefits for 18 months, and his 83-year-old parents had to pay his mortgage. The family that has had, the husband has had a stroke, and now you got 5 kids at home, and how are you going to feed them, right? The stories they're just us. We all have these stories in our families, even if it's addiction. We all have those stories within our family. So.
Just want to mention the coldest night of the year is coming.
Good job. Coldest Night of the Year is our biggest fundraiser at the food bank. We're hoping to raise $200,000 this year for that. Yeah, so that's a little over 10% of what we need in a year to support the food bank. So if anybody is interested in participating, you can check it out on our website. Thank you very much. Yeah, and if you can. Donate, and if you don't have the funds, figure out how to come and join us and lay hands on food, preferably in the months of February to September, when we got forgotten about. But we'd love to have you, especially the young and bendy ones. We do love the young and bendy. So
You like what?
the young and bendy, people who can bend down and pick up a box.
Not running Monday.
Yeah, the young and bendy. So.
People walking.
No, okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, always a pleasure. I enjoy listening to you because you make it fun, but you also add a lot of valuable information that I think a lot of us are just unaware of. So appreciate that, and appreciate you as well for sharing the coldest night. Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much for your insights as well. So Kevin's report will be available in the beginning or mid-January. We're expecting Kevin to come to County Council, do a fulsome presentation of their findings, not just agriculture, but the other industries as well that we've covered. And thank you all for coming, both in person and online. Really appreciate it. And yeah, season's greetings, happy holidays, drive home safely. Especially you, Leo, to the north, the far north.
Well, no, I was joking. I only have to go halfway in the Grand Valley.
Okay. But yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank
All the
you.
information in terms of the presentations will be sent out along with the recording of today as well. Thank you.
Can we get out without going back